Before we begin, please note, the views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the host and guests and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of any affiliated organization. The content provided is for informational purposes only and should not be considered as professional advice. We encourage listeners to conduct their own research and consult with relevant professionals before making any business or career decisions. Enjoy the episode.
Hello and welcome to the very first episode of Coffee and Career Chat, Startup Edition. I am Adel Hameed, your host for this episode or this podcast, where we'll be diving deep into the world of startups, career development, and everything in between. Whether you're a startup leader, an aspiring founder, or someone looking to break into the startup world, you've come to the right place. Before we dive into today's topics, let me share a little about myself. I have accumulated over 20 years of experience in various business aspects, including business development, operations management, team building, process optimization, angel investment, M&A due diligence, integration management, and so on. My professional journey has involved being responsible for multiple functions at the Economic Development Board of Bahrain, where I collaborated with regional global business leaders from renowned companies such as Amazon, Huawei, and Cisco to set up and expand their operations in the region. I also contributed to national strategic projects alongside experts from McKinsey & Co., Frost & Sullivan, and Deloitte. During my time also at the Saudi tech company Paytabs Payment Technologies, I have been involved in addressing complex strategic and operational challenges associated with scaling an ambitious and distinctive startup. And to a more recent one we've got, which is a turnaround project. I have had the privilege to enrich my expertise by mentoring startups through programs conducted by Techstars out of the US, which has a branch here in the Middle East, and specifically in Dubai and Riyadh. We've got MISC, which is a Saudi-based accelerator program. And then we've got Flash 6 Labs, which is another accelerator program that's spread within the Middle East region that's based out of Egypt. When I'm not occupied with my role as a business coach and a leader, I enjoy spending time with my 4 kids, tending to my garden, and indulging my passion for music and art. I play the piano and dabble in the ukulele, harmonica, guitar, and banjo. Now you got to know a bit about me, and that's enough. So now let's get into the interesting part, at least from my point of view. So in this podcast, you can expect insightful discussions, expert interviews, and actionable tips that will help you navigate your career and the startup ecosystem, and even in the company that you work for. Today, we'll be discussing some foundational topics to set the stage for future episodes. Let's start with what makes the startup ecosystem unique. The ecosystem that a startup is based in dictates a lot or impacts the level of success your startup will have. So I'll give you an example. This includes, for example, availability of cash and investors, the trust of investors in the ecosystem that you're based in, the availability of infrastructure such as internet, electricity, stuff like that. So all of these impact the level of success or how successful your startup or the startup you're joining could become. Another thing also could be the availability of talent, right? Availability of universities that are producing the talents that you require at that point of time or in the future. That means if you have an abundance of talented people, if you are based in, let's say, in Chennai, then the likelihood of you succeeding is much higher. The likelihood of you finding the right people with the right talent and skills and attitude is much higher. Your ability to be able to have better control over your team because you have a lower risk due to people leaving, people looking for other opportunities, something to consider. Because if you're also in a big ecosystem and a mature ecosystem, that means there are more opportunities that your team will be tempted, including you, will be tempted to take on as they gain more experience. So these are things also to consider. Startups are often described as dynamic, fast-paced, and innovative. Working in or with startups. Startups thrive on innovation and disruption. They challenge the status quo and bring fresh ideas to light. However, this also means they face unique challenges, such as dealing with limited resources, dealing with high risk. Most startups are not aware of what are the high risks that they're facing. This is why they need mentors and experienced investors, angel investors, VCs. And then the constant change in the ecosystem, right? You come up with a product and then the barrier to entry, or basically in other words, the ease of copying your product, or it's very easy to copy your product by a bigger company. So they just basically copy you and they take you out of business, or they try to acquire you with a very low price. So these are some challenges that startups face that you need to be aware of as a startup leader, because this impacts your success, whether you're a startup founder or just for those entering this world. It's crucial to be adaptable and ready to learn on the go. The ability to pivot and embrace change is not just valued, it's often a necessity, because if you're not adaptable, then my advice, stay at a corporate job or take a corporate job, because that will be a bit more stable for you. Now, there are certain disadvantages with that, depending on who you are, whether you're an A student, B student, C student, how fast you can progress, whether the opportunities are there as well or not. So there are many variables that determine your success in the corporate world. But the speed of rising, gaining higher titles and improving and learning in the startup world is much higher and faster for you when you join a startup. So this is on topic one. We're talking about the ecosystem. And then the second topic that we'll be discussing multiple times is the key skills required for you to succeed at a startup job. So let's look at that, right? So of course we could build a huge list of skills that you might require, leadership skills, soft skills that you might require to succeed at a startup role. However, in my view and from my experience, I've seen that simplifying the book I've written, Skill Up As You Scale Up, is the first book in a series that I'll be publishing. The first one is focused at giving you the key principles. I call them the SOS principles, so that you can have the right mindset when you join a startup. What's expected out of you, whether it's the right career path or no, what should you look at and be aware of and be mindful of. And then in later books, there are other frameworks that I've shared on the website, and I'll be delving into it deeper as we get into these episodes and the videos and courses that I'm working on right now. One of them is the FastMark framework that gives you, again, a framework that helps you deliver results fast, impactful results. And that, however, coming back to the key skills. So I call the key skills that I believe are important for you to keep in mind, I call it the LEDA skill set, which is L for leading with empathy, E, empowering employees to lead, because that's super important. If you'll be doing everything yourself and you'll be approving everything yourself and you want to be in the middle of everything because you don't trust anyone, then you'll fail. That's the unfortunate truth, because there will be a point where the company grows, you need a bigger team, and you become a bottleneck. The third skill is decisiveness and decision making. Right? And Decisiveness is important because you don't have enough information, and I have some examples I'll be sharing in the coming episodes and one that I'll be sharing today. Decisiveness is really key because you need to take calculated guesses. And for you to be able to take calculated guesses, you need to be comfortable with risk. You need to have the critical analytical thinking process that helps you deduct what are my options right now. And you need to be open to ask for help, look for feedback, gather the information that you need, and then accept the fact that there is a lot that's missing. So you need to make the best with the information that you have. And then finally is adaptability. The A stands for adaptability. And adaptability to change or the changing conditions out there, because definitely when you join a startup, especially at the beginning, there are lots of changes and you need to pivot, you need to adjust. Even the colleagues you're working together, there will be many people that won't be with you in 6 months, won't be with you in 1 year. Could be because there is a change in strategy. They could be because they fail. You might be fired as well. So this is why adaptability is important. You need to be open to learning new skills, to be open to contributing where you can, where you're needed, and that's the best way for you to grow in a startup, or especially in a startup leadership role. Now, leadership in startups isn't just about having the title. That's something that you have to keep in mind. And unfortunately, most of us, when we join companies and join startups, our egos, our ambitions, sometimes they get in the way because we look at the immediate thing, which is the title. Sometimes, and I guarantee you, I've seen it everywhere, there are people that have certain titles, including me. I had certain titles that were much bigger than what I was doing. Even though maybe at the beginning when I joined, it was covering a lot. But as you're moving within the company and you have more people coming in and you grow, you need to let go of some of these responsibilities, right? And everyone is being tested at the beginning, right? Including the CEO. It's all about delivering results and success. So this is why the titles really, my advice is yes, titles are important, right? But it's not the most important thing. Focus on how you can contribute, where you can grow, where you can add more value, and what results can you deliver. All of these are things that are more important than the title. As the company matures, like they say, the titles will change, but eventually the frequency of the change will slow down and things will start freezing. Things will start getting clearer. And that's the evolution of any startup. The other thing as well, you have to keep in mind, it's about the influence, right? It's about influence, vision, and the ability to inspire the team towards a common goal. That's really is the leadership, that leadership skill, or what leadership means, what it means to be a startup leader. Also having an emotional intelligence. Basically, emotional intelligence means being able to read the room, being able to read people, being able to keep people motivated, not lying to them, but how do you align their values, their motivators with what needs to be done. Understanding and managing your emotion and their emotions as well. It's interlinked with the communication between you and the team, you and your peers, you and the CEO. And let's not forget, again, decision making. In a startup, decisions often need to be made quickly and with limited information. The ability to weigh options and make informed choices is invaluable. It's super important. And especially when you can deliver more wins than failures. And with the failures, you adjust and move on. So there are many benefits that we'll be discussing in later episodes. The third topic, as well, which is the final for today, is looking at how you as a leader, or me as a leader, how can I survive, but not survive by, as one of my colleagues called, right, where you keep the KPIs loose and you look for ways to, not to get pinned on a specific KPI or deliverable. The whole concept of fogging is that when you create so much noise so that it distracts people about your performance, many people get into that kind of mode, right? It's a toxic mode. Eventually, as a leader, it will catch up with you. That's also another thing we'll discuss for another day. As we interview different hosts, we get into discussing different concepts, stories, and discussions. Meanwhile, I want to share a quick story from my own experience in the startup world, highlighting the unpredictability and resilience often required. A few years ago, just before a weekend, our service suddenly dropped. We had a lot of customers that we gained due to the popularity of the product, and it was mostly organic. We didn't have a properly outlined policy or procedures to communicate with our merchants, with our customers, even to collaborate with each other, who's responsible for what, so that we can resolve this issue, we can keep the merchants informed, make sure that they feel comfortable and confident that we're dealing with the issue, and then we're restoring it, and we'll inform them as soon as the issue or the service has been restored. We didn't have any of that in place. And everyone was waiting for someone to take the call, and I was new at that job. I found myself in a challenging situation. As the person responsible for customer care, I was left alone to make the calls with limited information. And I had people that were expecting me to fail. Actually, they wanted me to fail because I was in their way. And I won't tell you which company that was, but yeah, I'll leave it at that. And had to pull in team members that I believe they're objective, pragmatic, and they could help out. So I had to take with some of them the leap of faith because I needed their function to be involved. So I was left alone to make the calls with limited information. And once I brought the team together, and imagine it's a weekend, right? So everyone is busy with their own thing. The last thing they want is for me to chase them and bring them because we have an issue, right? So people will start rationalizing why what I'm proposing is actually not important. But I had to stick to my grounds and say that this is the right thing to do because this is the way and it has to be done this way. For now, there are lots of gaps, but we need to focus on resolving it for now, learning from it, and then we'll create a procedure for it later so that we avoid the miscommunications, the overlap of responsibilities, and lack of clarity in the roles. And I was lucky as well that the CEO of that company was very supportive and empowered me to push things forward, even though there was a risk of me failing and then even losing my job. It was a risk I had to take. That was the test for me. He empowered me to push things forward and made the right decisions. I didn't know at that time. I just did what I believed is the right thing to do, consulted with the people that I needed to consult with, and made the call. I was also lucky that I had some colleagues that were pragmatic, they were sincere, they loved what they're doing, and they wanted to do the right thing. I was blessed, and I believe that contributed greatly to my success, especially with that emergency. The firefighting began. I quickly drafted the communication plan with the recommended actions and frequency of update. I established an internal emergency communication channel and kept monitoring the issue while the engineering team worked tirelessly on resolving the issue. Taking responsibility in such a situation, while the outcomes weren't perfect, the lessons learned became the stepping stones for us to build a moderately mature process at the beginning, where we had at least a foundation and we continued building on. So we were more prepared for future incidents as we started facing them. Because again, incidents will happen. You have to log them, you have to learn from them and move on. It could have easily turned disastrous, honestly. But it taught us, and it taught me as well, the value of trust, teamwork, and swift action in a crisis. People who point fingers and they highlight the mistakes and they start isolating themselves because they don't want to be seen as someone who made a mistake. These are people that eventually won't be with you, or at least they won't rise in the rank, because there is like a natural selection that happens with companies, especially as you grow and become more successful. that natural selection takes care of things, right? Yeah. And there are, I'm sure, over time, we'll be exploring and we'll be seeing this everywhere, from the stories of the guests and from your experience as well, as you're navigating the startup world and your startup career. So thank you so much for joining me on this inaugural episode of Coffee and Career Chat, the Startup Edition. I hope you found our discussion enlightening and that you're as excited as I am to embark on this journey together. To stay updated on future episodes, make sure you subscribe to the podcast and follow us on the social media channels. The handle is a unified handle, so it's SAUS Leadership, which is SAUS, which stands for Scale Up As You Scale Up. Leadership, again, it's one word, no spaces, no hyphens, no underscores. And we're available on LinkedIn, Instagram, X, which is formerly Twitter, TikTok, and YouTube. I'd love to hear your thoughts, and if you have any suggestions, please leave your comments. You can do that also on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, and recently we launched also on Amazon Music. Join us next time as we explore the topic of scaling, challenges, and strategies in startups, where we'll be delving into the common obstacles startups face when scaling and discussing effective strategies to overcome them. Featuring insights from my interview with Mr. Adel Hameed, who is also the COO or Chief Operating Officer and co-founder of Washman. Their website is washman.com. So you won't want to miss this. So please make sure you join us, because that will be an interesting episode. And looking forward to our interactions. And please leave your comments, put your suggestions so that we can improve the future episodes, and make sure you follow us. For now, wish you a great day.